In addition to thinking about questions concerning whether to be a pioneer or to follow, you must also take into account your ability to execute a launch strategy. Here you want to take into account a variety of specifics that are listed on the slide. These include seasonality, licensing, price and distribution, promotion, advertising, a conventional set of questions that you should be familiar with from marketing and other issues, but nevertheless an important factor. The assumption, however, of how the question of how to prosper from an is not only a question of entry, but it's also a question of appropriation. Appropriation concerns questions of how you're going to capture the value from your invention. And so that naturally leads us to questions focusing on and concerned with what determines the inventor's share of the profits. Note that just because you happen to have achieved a market position over time, it doesn't isolate you from success or from the effects of competition. Changing technology can change the state of affairs. I went too far ahead here, so let me back up. Great ideas do not equal sustainable wealth. Microsoft dominated the marketplace in the 90s, such that in 2000 it controlled 97% of market share. By 2016, it's going to be estimated that Google's going to control 39%, Apple 29%, Microsoft will be down to 26% of the market share. A huge change in the marketplace, which was, and the this shift in operating market share can be attributed to the rise of mobile computing. But even in manufacture, where you think things are more stable, you will see that technology and changing platforms influences one's fate. Here we have Dell and HP Compaq were the dominant competitors in 2005. Apple actually only had less than 3% of the market share. By 2012, we see the big producers, HP, Dell, Toshiba, Acer, all holding significant market shares. But what's interesting is Apple is up almost to 12%. Moreover, Apple is charging a premium for their products, while the price of products sold by Dell and HP has plummeted to under $1,000. Apple is still commanding $1,000 to $2,000 for its product, a significant premium over the marketplace. So we have to take into account and to think about how market dynamics shift over time with technology and what we can do about that to make sure that we benefit from it. So what enables a company to profit from innovation? I propose to you that there are three factors to consider: uniqueness, complementary assets, and the business model and the positioning of that business model in the right position. Uniqueness has to do with your ability to control how the knowledge of your invention is used, how it's applied. Complementary assets are questions concerning who has what is needed to produce your good or service. Model design is simply that if you even if you develop the appropriate business model, that is one that has properly defined the proposition, has all the pieces in place, that model needs to be positioned in the value chain in the marketplace so that you are isolated from competitive pressures and therefore can prosper for the longest period of time possible in the face of changing market demand and pressure from your competitors. We're going to go over each of these factors in turn. Uniqueness. Here we think about intellectual property in the form of patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Another mechanism, and the most effective mechanisms for protecting your products, are secrecy and or sometimes the sheer complexity of the product itself. Complexity makes things difficult to copy, creates causal ambiguity, so that even though you are able to produce a good and your competitors can see what it is you do, they find it difficult to imitate and prosper. Also, you can also achieve uniqueness by being first, being the only one in the marketplace. In such cases where your product itself is relatively imitable if it turns out that your competitors are not paying too much attention to you, that you're under the radar. Entering as strong as you can into a marketplace allows you to can allow you to gain advantage and prosper, even though strong competitive pressure is going to be coming down the road. Intellectual property, as we'll note in lectures, upcoming lectures on intellectual property, have some pros and cons. It's costly. They have limited utility because competitors often can and do copy products quite rapidly. And their role is primarily defensive. That is to say, even though you have a patent or a copyright, they are only useful if you have the funds to file a lawsuit and fight that lawsuit. If you do not act on it, its competitors can copy your product and get away with it, and it becomes incumbent on you to spend the money to try to do that, and the courts are slow and difficult to enforce, so you end up with concluding that the utility of intellectual property is sometimes quite limited. Complementary assets is also an important consideration. These are things that are required in the production or delivery of your good or service, and there's a variety of different types of complementary assets to take into account. Things involved in manufacture, things involved in marketing, things involved in design. There are also things you own: brand name, channel, distribution channels, location, customers, relationships. Those you may not have, as the inventor, access to everything that's required for you to prosper. When we talk about platform strategies, well, if you think about it being a video game manufacturer, a Wii or something along those lines, those products are only as good as the games that are played on them. And so the important relationships there were between the manufacturers and producers like Entertainment Arts, who's producing the large successful games. The fact that those game platforms, the Wii or the Microsoft box and other platforms, are only valuable to the extent that those game designers can put very attractive games on the marketplace. Sorry about the phone ringing there. So we have a variety of factors influencing complementary assets important to take into account. Another factor about complementary assets is to think how you benefit or use from them. The notion here is that those who, if the assets are rare, then the owner can benefit by renting those assets through license, joint venture, strategic alliance. Here you can license an invention if and benefit from it. But be wary. Those who own or control the complementary assets determine who can profit from innovation, even if you don't own or control the invention. The example here of the Wii and the game platforms is important to take into account. When you think about the value of complementary assets, the notion here is that they're more valuable if they're rare due to their availability, they're tightly held, they can be leveraged across multiple products or markets, and you have an established relationship. And also if product life cycles are long. So here, the ability to control complementary assets helps explain why firms that own or control market channels, whether both in the form of reputation and or distribution, often do well over time in markets. Another factor to consider about the role of complementary assets in the life and the value of a technology is that the value of uniqueness and the value of assets change over the product life cycle. Early on, when a product is first introduced, things that help keep that product unique and distinctive tend to be quite valuable. By the time product reaches maturity, those who own the complementary assets will have levered their bargaining power to gain some advantage. The implication is quite simply that as you start to consider questions concerning complementary assets and uniqueness, your strategic posture, it has to change over time. It's going to vary with your level of uniqueness and your ability to control complementary assets that are required for its production and or distribution. Finally, it's also going to change quite a bit with the business model and your location within the value chain. I'm going to move now to part 3.